About 50 years ago, an astronaut returning from the moon experienced things that he couldn't find a scientific explanation for. So, with some colleagues, he launched a new science focused on the mind and how it works in the body and across space and time. It's the field of Noetics, where the tools of modern science are used to help us understand how what we think and feel affects us and the world around us. Now, this is Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments from the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon.
This is Noetic Moments, where we explore the field of research that discovers what consciousness is, what it does, how it works, and how our lives could be very different if we understood it better. I'm Ruth Miller, a longtime student of consciousness, as well as cybernetics, anthropology, and a few other things, and through this series of programs, I'm introducing some of the people whose work has defined this field of research, explaining some of their ideas and experiments as they've emerged over the last 100 years. I'll also explore some relevant news items and answer questions that you send to my email address, ruth@noeticmoments.org, and Noetic is spelled Noetic. Well, a year ago, we started this journey of exploring this research, and we've focused on the various models that people have developed to explain our experience and the experiments that have supported those models. We learned that what goes on in the mind, that much of it is not even in our conscious awareness. It goes on in unconscious processes. Our minds, in fact, can be thought of as having three aspects. One of them is what we're aware of, our personal awareness. Another is what we aren't aware of that's keeping our bodies going and also includes our fears and beliefs about potential threats and dangers, which we call the individual subconscious. And the third aspect of our mind is what we aren't aware of that enlivens our beings and guides us in our actions, which we can call the individual superconscious. We learned that we can change our state of consciousness and shift which aspects of mind we are aware of and what we're capable of in the moment. We learned that while it's possible to say where in the brain various processes are active, no one has yet been able to demonstrate where memories are actually stored or what the pathway is by which ideas and thoughts come into being. We've also seen that the responses in our body to both our individual mental activity and what's going on around us happen far faster than nerve impulses or chemicals can travel through the body. So it's clear that who and what we are, our consciousness, and our decisions and choices aren't all originating in the brain. As a result, many scientists have come to accept that what we call mind is not the product of the electrochemical activity of the brain, but is in fact the activity of a kind of field that surrounds and permeates the whole body. This field appears to be at least partly electromagnetic because it's possible to measure electromagnetic activity for several feet around the body. So the brain is best understood as a receiver-transmitter that receives messages from the field we call mind, transmits them into the body, and receives messages from the senses and transmits them to the rest of the body and to this field of mind. We've also learned that the brain modifies what it receives from both the senses and from the mind to fit past patterns of experience that are stored as connections among the neurons. They're hardwired, so to speak, according to Begg's principle that neurons that fire together wire together. And this means that we see and hear and feel what we expect or believe we will experience. Experiments that we've looked at demonstrated that what we call the individual mind continues to perceive and process for as much as several hours, even when the brain and heart are flatlined and the person has been declared dead. Which may be why most reports from those who've been through that experience do not fit past patterns of experiences that are stored in their brain's neuronal connections. Mind, then, is a field, a pattern of informed energy that exists during and after the body is functioning as the superconscious, develops with the body and brain as the subconscious, and is being told by the sensory parts of the brain what the world out there is like in our personal awareness, or, as some researchers call it, our default thought structure. Now, every field has a unique pattern of vibration that makes it different from other fields. And some experiments have demonstrated that people and some animals who have minds that are vibrating along the same patterns, that is, they resonate with each other, are able to sense when the other, in their resonant field, is focusing attention on them or is about to come home. Their bodies change in subtle ways when someone they're connected with turns attention their way, even though they can't see or hear them doing so. These experiments include people responding to telephone calls or emails, or animals beginning to act and prepare for their people to come home before the person has even left where they're leaving, but they've begun to gather their things. Well, beyond all of that, we've learned that mind does affect matter. It's demonstrated in the famous double-slit experiments in quantum physics, but also in various experiments that involve computers, especially the Global Consciousness Project, where shifting readouts on random number generators are measuring what the human mind, the general mind of humanity, is focusing on. So more and more, scientists are equating the larger field of human consciousness, which Carl Jung called the collective conscious, are equating that larger field with the quantum field, or the zero-point field, out of which all matter and energy arise. It's a global brain, a noosphere, a collective consciousness. We don't know what it is. One man, Ervin Laszlo, calls it the Akashic field, using a Sanskrit term for storage of memory. Based on all of that, we begin to understand how bodies and environments can shift and change as people change their thought processes, what they're focusing on in their personal awareness, and it also helps us understand the effectiveness of mental or spiritual or faith healings and what's called the placebo effect, how the belief of a person in a treatment can help that person, the one receiving the treatment, experience healing. So based on all of this, we've begun to explore some of the more popular descriptions of how the mind works, including the way the world around us reflects what we've been focusing on in what's often called the law of attraction, and the way we can access information in that quantum or Akashic field through insight, intuition, and increasingly understood processes called channeling. Now, you can catch up on our past shows on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where you'll also find links to the clips and books and authors that I mention. All right, so the past few shows, as I say, have focused on how the mind can retrieve information from other sources of information that are not necessarily material. This week, I thought we would look at what the mind-brain connection is doing while we sleep. We're going to ask the question, what is dreaming? Now, if you go online, you'll find there are many, many books explaining the cultural meaning of the objects and experiences we encounter while dreaming. And if you remember your dreams, which you can do if you keep a journal right next to your bed and move as little as possible when you wake up and write down what you remember, you'll find that those books can be helpful in making sense of the sometimes nonsensical combinations that occur in the dream state. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were among the first to scientifically examine the content of dreams, and they used them to help people who were struggling with mental and emotional issues to recover. Carl Jung's dreams Carl Jung's book, Dreams, is still a classic. But not all dreams are about symbols. Here's a PBS science show on the subject.
Almost half of us remember at least one dream a week, and women are more likely to remember their dreams daily compared to men. There are a number of phases that the brain goes through during sleep. These phases are repeated in cycles throughout the night. Almost all other animals, whales, wombats, wildebeest, sleep. And many also experience REM sleep. So scientists think that many of these animals also dream, including, of course, your cat or dog. The way we think about dreams has changed a lot throughout history. In most cultures around the world, dreaming has held spiritual significance, and there are even dream interpretations in the Bible. The belief that dreams held hidden messages to be interpreted or decoded remained the dominant way to look at dreams through the first part of the 20th century. In 1900, Sigmund Freud published this influential book, Interpretation of Dreams. And in it, he claimed that dream interpretation could be used to understand unconscious desires. And Carl Jung expanded Freud's theories. See, Jung considered archetypal symbols that often appeared in dreams, like a wise old sage or a trickster, to be universal among humans. Jung thought that dreams were interpretable. If we could crack the code of these universal symbols, the language of dreams. According to Jung, dreams had two functions. They compensated for things that the dreamer ignored or repressed, and they looked forward to give the dreamer hints about what might happen in the future. Lots of people still look for meaning in their dreams, especially to do with the future. Researchers are asking what functions and benefits our brains themselves might get from dreaming. At first, scientists believed that the strange mishmash of pictures and stories and events that we experience while dreaming were just side effects of basic biological processes in our brain, a sort of neurological noise that we experience as we sleep. Scientists thought that other parts of the brain tried to make sense of this noise by threading this random slideshow into a story, often a very weird story. This is called the activation synthesis theory of dreaming. But experiments showed that dreams are not actually random. Some things are more likely to appear in our dreams than others. So scientists began to wonder, maybe dreams aren't random noise. Maybe our brains need to dream to be healthy. What we dream about often has to do with what we do while we're awake, especially if we're learning something new. In one study, about a third of participants who played Alpine Racer 2, an arcade downhill skiing simulator, had dreams about the game. Consider this, the things that happen to you every day only happen once. In our short-term memory, these experiences are fragile. They can easily disappear. Our daily experiences might only make it into our long-term memory if they're replayed several times. You guessed it, in our dream. Patterns of brain activity just after dreaming look a lot like when our brains store and retrieve episodic memories of things that actually happened to us. So dreams might be a sort of memory replay of our experiences, with an extra layer of weirdness on top, just to make it fun, I guess. It's not all fun and games, though. Dreams can turn into nightmares. Now, there's no universally accepted definition of what a nightmare is, but they're commonly considered some distressing or terrifying dream, one that goes so far as to wake you up. About 1 in 40 dreams is a nightmare. So why do our brains replay our worst fears and memories? Well, the threat simulation theory suggests that dreams let us practice dangerous events and situations. That's why some people relive traumatic experiences in dreams. The brain is trying to condition us to survive threatening experiences by practicing in a safe environment inside our sleeping brain. Back when life-threatening situations were a part of our species' everyday life, simulating threats could have helped us survive. But in the modern world, reliving awful situations and chronic nightmares can be debilitating. But we also practice social situations in dreaming. That's the social simulation theory of dreams. Scientists notice that our dreams are heavy on social situations. A fight with a close friend, a date with a crush, a clash with a coworker, not wearing pants to school. Since being social is so important to our species, practicing these situations would have been an evolutionary advantage. The strange experience of dreaming can be used for problem solving too. The novelist John Steinbeck once said, "It is a common experience that a problem difficult at night is resolved in the morning after the committee of sleep has worked on it." When college students were given a homework problem to focus on each night before bed, a quarter of them dreamed the answer within a week. Because dreams aren't limited by logic or physics. That means they're a great place to problem solve and come up with creative and sometimes weird solutions. It's especially helpful when solutions to problems need a very different approach compared to conventional wisdom. And this may be why we owe so many great pieces of art to dreams. Salvador Dali's Melting Clocks, Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, and countless others are inspired by dreams. So can you dream your way to a Nobel Prize or a Grammy? Well, maybe. Scientists are experimenting with dream incubation as a way to prime the brain before sleep to be more creative. So, because dreaming is so common and because we spend so much of our lives doing it, it's almost certainly useful for one or many reasons. But why did dreaming evolve to begin with? Scientists think the origin of dreaming just might have to do with the sheer amount of time that humans and all animals spend in the dark. So our ability to use our peepers and see the world around us is obviously an extremely important evolutionary advantage. Because it's so important, the part of the brain responsible for sight, called the visual cortex, takes up a big chunk of our brains. But here's the thing, our brains can also be rewired pretty easily. If you were blindfolded, your brain would begin to change within an hour of not using your sight. The neurons of the visual cortex start being taken over for other tasks. The lengthy darkness of nighttime would have meant that the visual cortex of our human ancestors was at a high risk of being taken over by other functions while we slept. If we didn't use it, we could lose it. Dreams and their highly visual nature may have evolved in mammals to keep those vulnerable brain areas active at night and keep the brain from rewiring itself in unfortunate ways.
Well, clearly there are a number of reasons and possible explanations for the dreaming process. My grandmother had a different set of explanations that actually has fit my experience almost better than those hypotheses that were suggested, apart from the one that says by having visual activity in the dark, the visual cortex remains functional. So as my grandmother told me, we have 4 kinds of dreams. One of them is simply organizing the day's events in some pattern that makes sense to the way our particular mind is structured. The second one has to do with what we are becoming, what we are learning to be, and we may actually have set up for ourselves or may have been guided by other resonant minds to learn certain things with an educational dream. A third one, and I think this was my grandmother's favorite, is we're actually serving during our dreams. The part of our mind that is not limited to the body is able to reach resonant folks in other parts of the world and other possibly parts of the universe or the space-time continuum, and is able to serve in ways that we particularly know how to. And the final part that grandmother suggested and actually has been tested, and I'll put a link on the website for this, and that is that our dreams are testing out possible futures. That during the night, the subconscious mind is taking whatever it was that the normal thought process was focusing on during the day and working out possible or probable futures from those things. So if we've been working on a particular problem, or we've been upset about a particular kind of situation, or we are discovering new possibilities, or we're in love, or whatever it is that we've been focusing on during the day, particularly last thing in the evening, the mind says, oh, okay, that's what we're going to do more of. Let's see how we can make that happen, and explores 3 or 4 ways to make that happen. If you've ever had déjà vu, it's probably because you dreamed a probability of what could happen, and you actually had that experience. As I say, I have some documentation on that called Experiments with Time from 100 years ago. And there's another kind of dreaming that is valid and useful to be aware of. I'll let this TED Talk experiencer share it with you.
So the question is whether or not we can control our dreams to an extent that they become clear enough for us to start enjoying the adjective lucid. Some scientists, such as Daniel Ehrlicher, answers this question with a definite yes. Before talking about how to get into that parallel universe, now, to get into the lucid dream realm, you need to learn to distinguish between reality and fantasy. In other terms, between being awake and dreaming. When you recognize dreams as what they are, you can become lucid. First off, it's extremely helpful to start a dream journal. So every morning, as soon as you wake up, you write down your dreams in as much details as you can. And after a while, you're going to notice that you're remembering them better. You can then look for recurring themes or situations to help you realize that you're dreaming. Those are known as dream signs. The second step is to execute reality checks to test whether or not you're dreaming. So those are actions that you'll do during the day in order to condition your mind to become more aware of itself. For example, if you start constantly asking yourself whether you're asleep or awake during daytime, you'll be developing a habit. And like all habits, you'll start doing that unconsciously as well. By that, I mean that you'll do it in your dreams. Only then, the answer won't be I'm awake. And through this, you'll realize that you're in fact dreaming. Also, counting your fingers, checking the time, looking at yourself in a mirror would provide you with a better understanding of your current state, since everything is distorted and will act unnaturally in dreams.
The idea of lucid dreaming is also thought of as controlled dreaming or awake dreaming. That is, you're in a dream state, but you decide intentionally through your normal thought processes what you're going to do in this dream. It does kind of make it difficult to do the other kinds of dreaming if you turn your dreams into waking experiences, but it also lets you explore and try things that maybe you couldn't do in your waking state. Lots of people like to explore flying, jumping off of cliffs, jumping out of airplanes. Others like to explore wandering around in places they couldn't otherwise be, or talking with people they wouldn't otherwise be able to talk with. This is what lucid dreaming is. So dreams are a very important part of our experience in consciousness, and in many ways they can be thought of as how the brain remains attuned to the right frequencies and helps to align it with the pattern of mind that we are. So let's look at some books on this subject. Normally I have us look at one book, but I found a marvelous site that actually explores what they're called the best books on the science of dreams. The writer on this site is Antonio Zadra. Shepherd is the website that he's working on. Now, he wrote a book. His book with Robert Stickgold is When Brains Dream. And he says questions on the origins and meaning of dreams are as old as humankind. And then he says When Brains Dream addresses these core questions about dreams and covers the most up-to-date science in the field. Quote, making an engaging case for why the human brain needs to dream. When Brains Dream offers compelling answers. And then he describes a series of books that he believes are helpful. And one of them is Dreams and How to Guide Them, Practical Observations, by Léon Derville de Saint-Denis, obviously French. In this, he says, have you ever wondered what happens to our mind as we fall asleep? In the remarkable 1867 book, Dreams and How to Guide Them, Saint-Denis uses his finely honed skills as a lucid dreamer. Another one that he has on his list is Carl Jung's The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, which we've already talked a little bit about. This book exposes Jung's view of dreaming as a wholesome, natural process that can give rise to creative, even transcendent experiences. And then there's the classic, Stephen LaBerge and Howard Rheingold's Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming. It provides a practical and insightful approach, he says, to lucid dreaming and its applications, blending dream science, personal experience, and non-traditional approaches to dream exploration. Another one that he includes in his list is The Psychology of Dreaming, written by Josie Malinowski. He says it's a smart and easy-to-read introduction to the psychology of dreams, covering topics like the history of dreaming, how dreams are scientifically studied, etc., complete with personal examples, eye-opening insights, and a thoughtful discussion of ethical questions surrounding emerging dream-related technologies. Then he brings in Patrick McNamara's The Neuroscience of Sleep and Dreams. He says this book provides a comprehensive introduction to the neuroscience of sleep and dreams, in addition to covering a wide range of neuroscientific ideas and discoveries. This well-organized and easy-to-follow book discusses many of these sleep and dream-related findings. Those are his recommendation, Antonio Zadra, as he had put together his book on dreams, what he suggests other people might be interested in. So I thought I would share that with you today. Well, that's it for today's show. The next time we get together, we'll look at more of the research being done in an attempt to understand what consciousness is, what it really does, and how we can experience life differently when we use it fully. We are out of time for today, but remember, you can continue the exploration on our website, www.noeticmoments.org, where there is a list of the titles and other resources we refer to on the show. For now, thanks for joining me here on Noetic Moments, recorded in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in Florence, Oregon, and have a wonderful week.
You've been listening to Dr. Ruth Miller's Noetic Moments. This program is produced in the studios of KXCR Community Radio in beautiful Florence, Oregon, supported by you, our listeners. Our theme music is Tumbling Planets, composed and performed by Jeff Lovejoy. To hear this program again or learn more about Noetic Sciences, search our website, www.noeticmoments.org.